Money Arata. Every right is relative. For example, you have the freedom of speech, but that is a relative right because you cannot use it to slander someone. And you have the right to property, but that is also relative since the government can limit the amount of money that you can withdraw daily. A judge could order your bank account to be frozen. Do these seem like unlikely scenarios? Well, prepare yourself. Every single day, your right to property is being violated. The government uses inflation to devalue your savings. If you work hard and if you save up, your money will be worthless in the future. Bitcoin strengthens your right to own property, and that is why it is worth your attention. Bitcoin cannot be blocked, frozen, confiscated, let alone devalued through uncontrolled issuance of more currency. But maybe you still have not gotten to buying Bitcoin and experimenting with cryptocurrency. Maybe you have not seen good reasons to exchange some of your traditional money for this new digital currency. So today I'm sharing 5 reasons why Bitcoin is superior to traditional money. And once you know these 5 reasons, you'll be much more excited and sure about entering the new world of money. This is not financial advice. Please read the full disclaimer before proceeding. 1. Bitcoin is decentralized. No superior power will be able to decide how you handle your money. In the first episode of the Money Arata series, we spoke a little bit about the history of money. At first, money was an instrument created by individuals to facilitate trade. Only much later did the state begin to exercise a monopoly over money, centralizing power and changing the rules according to the will of those who are in charge. Currencies like the dollar, the pound sterling, or the yen, they are all controlled by a central body in their respective countries. These currencies are issued without any backing. In other words, there is no correspondence between the money that the government prints and some equivalent wealth in precious metal. These currencies have value because people trust the government, or they have to trust the government. Therefore, state currencies are known as fiduciary. The word fiduciary comes from the Latin, fidere, which is associated with faith. So fiduciary money depends on the trust that we have. As soon as people lose trust in the money, it ceases to have value. The value of fiduciary money is determined by a central body and not through merit or free choice. The problem is that this gives too much power to the central body. And the problem with centralizing financial power is that you lose your freedom to use your money as you please, and you also held hostage to the unilateral decisions of the government. It is not possible to have a free society where money is controlled in a centralized way. Freedom and centralization are opposite concepts. Where there is centralization, there is corruption. The problems of fiduciary money are very much linked to the centralization and dependence on politicians. When you think of politicians, what are the first things that come to your mind? Bureaucracy, inefficiency, corruption, slowness, insecurity, uncertainty. All the problems that are linked to governments are passed onto state currencies. And this is not an accident. Fiduciary money is one of the most powerful instruments that governments have to maintain control, to monitor and dominate the population. Whenever there is something controlled by a central body, it faces a great risk. The reverse is also true. With a decentralized network, there is no single weak point to be attacked. There is no single body that is too powerful. And that is the big advantage of Bitcoin in comparison to traditional currencies. Bitcoin was created to exist in a decentralized network of equals, without a central controlling body. The fact that Bitcoin is decentralized, it means it cannot be blocked. Decentralization gives power to individuals. Everyone knows the rules, and no one has more power than anyone else. In practice, this means that there is no central body deciding how, when, or where you can use your money. This means freedom and total control on your property without needing to ask anyone for permission. You also don't need to show proof of income, proof of residence, or negative debt certificates to open an account on the Bitcoin network. Anyone can be their own bank, regardless of age, skin color, or religion. All you need is access to a computer or mobile phone with internet, and that's it. The fact that it is decentralized also gives rise to other important features, such as protection against devaluation. Now let's talk about the scarcity of Bitcoin. True, Bitcoin was programmed to be scarce. You will never see your money being devalued by excessive currency in circulation. Before the invention of money as we know today, some societies chose a product to serve as a means of exchange and facilitate bartering for products and services. Salt, tobacco, camels, and even shells were some of the things chosen to serve as a means of exchange. But people soon realized that to have value, the chosen good needed to be scarce. Just think about it. Anything that is chosen as money runs the risk of inflation. If salt is used as money, a race begins to obtain larger quantities of salt, causing devaluation. Salt, therefore, is just an example of a weak currency. And this is one of the main reasons why gold ended up being chosen by most social groups. There is a high cost to pay to mine gold. Gold is sound currency because it is scarce, besides having all the positive characteristics such as durability, portability, the ease of being divided into small quantities. Although gold is relatively heavy, it is much more practical to trade using gold coins than to trade with camels, for instance. Even when paper money was invented, for a long time that paper needed to have a corresponding value in precious metal to be issued. This was known as the gold standard. However, after the Second World War, state spending increased sharply and pressure grew for governments to print more money. The gold standard began to fall into disuse until it was officially abandoned. Today, the only backing of state currencies is the trust in the governments that issue them. Printing more money without any backing, generating inflation, is basically a way to rob the people. Whenever a government prints more money, it is basically stealing the purchasing power of the population. This theft could be done through taxes. However, since increasing taxes is a very unpopular measure, governments prefer to basically print more money and debase the currency. Thus, state currencies today are not exactly a scarce commodity. This is a problem with the centralization of money. Governments have centralized power, so they can always issue more currency, devaluing the money in your wallet and generating inflation. This is not the case with Bitcoin, which is decentralized. Since Bitcoin was invented, the software has been programmed to issue just under 21 million Bitcoins. It is a finite amount that cannot be changed. And this guarantees the scarcity of Bitcoin. Bitcoins are issued through a process called proof-of-work mining, and the people and the companies involved are called miners, and they invest in equipment and electricity in order to participate. And when these miners help to facilitate transactions made on the Bitcoin network by performing complex calculations, they are rewarded. They earn new Bitcoins. However, mining becomes more difficult over time. To mine the first Bitcoins, the calculations were relatively easy, but the more Bitcoins issued, the more complex the calculations become. This was all done on purpose for Bitcoin to become sound money, a scarce and therefore valuable good. Today, you can easily find out how many Bitcoins have been mined and are in circulation, and you can find a good mathematical prediction of how many Bitcoins will be mined in the coming years. State currencies are weak because politicians are able to issue them freely depending on the will of the people who are in charge. So there is no guarantee of scarcity, and your money will certainly depreciate over time. On the other hand, Bitcoin is sound because it can only be issued by the rules that are previously defined and known by everyone. And this guarantees scarcity and value. That is why decentralization and scarcity are two main reasons why Bitcoin is superior to state currencies. But there are more. Let's now talk about divisibility. 3. Bitcoin is easy to divide and cluster using the power of programming. You may have been confused by what I just said, that there will always be less than 21 million bitcoins in circulation. You might be thinking now that if this is the case, there will never be enough bitcoins for everyone. And that is wrong. While a dollar can be divided only by a maximum of 1 cent, each bitcoin can be divided by up to 8 decimal places. Therefore, if you're intimidated by the price of Bitcoin being so high, you can always calculate using sats, or satoshis, that represent 0.00000001 Bitcoin, which is 100 millionth of a single Bitcoin. This ability to divide and cluster allows you to make microtransactions and have greater flexibility in currency use. And there are more and more features being created to help you to make fast transactions at near zero cost. 4. Bitcoin is just as durable or even more durable than gold. Do you remember that durability was one of the reasons for using precious metals as a means of exchange in many different social groups? Well, Bitcoin is just as durable than precious metals like gold and silver, if not more. One Bitcoin is a piece of information in a database, a register, an entry in a ledger that is public and shared. This information is replicated as a backup on thousands of computers around the world. The only way to destroy Bitcoin would be to destroy all the information in all the databases that are shared and copied on thousands of computers connected around the planet, and also in satellites in orbit. In simple terms, the only way to destroy Bitcoin is to destroy the internet. Now imagine a catastrophic situation where the internet stops working. In this case, you would lose access to all your Bitcoins, right? Right. But you also lose access to your state currency, unless you actually save all your money in notes and coins under your mattress. In the unlikely event that this happens, that the whole internet crashes forever, it will also be difficult for you to use your internet banking, or your credit card, or any other modern way of using your money. Remember that your money today is already digital. The numbers that you see in your bank account, on your laptop, or your mobile phone do not actually exist in banknotes, in a safe inside of the bank. But if you're very traditional, and if you prefer to keep money stored in notes, in a safe, in your house, or under your mattress, you're taking a big risk. The risk is devaluation. Money that is idle basically loses purchasing power over time. The second risk is physical. Paper notes can be burned, torn up, get lost, wet, stolen, or they can simply be replaced. Remember all the names of the different national currencies that simply ceased to exist after just a few decades. The problem with fiduciary currency is that you are always dependent on other people to be able to enjoy the purchasing power of your money. You need great trust in the government to be able to be comfortable using state currency. And to build a prosperous society, generally it is not a good idea to be depending on the government. 5. Bitcoin is more portable than any state currency ever invented. Because it is 100% digital, Bitcoin is highly portable. It has no weight, no space, no atoms. You can send Bitcoin anywhere in the world, at low cost, at any time, without bureaucracy, without having to explain to anyone how and why you're using your money. If you're traveling to a foreign country, there is a risk that border control will be checking how much money or how much gold you're carrying. They can fine you, they can confiscate your money. This risk does not exist with Bitcoin. To send Bitcoin, you don't need prior authorization from any government authority. Therefore, it is the only type of money suitable for people who value their own freedom. Moreover, Bitcoin is so portable that you don't need to rely on a third party for the custody of your money. You become your own bank. All the transactions are automatically intermediated by the Bitcoin network itself. With state currencies, well, you need a bank, you need some international remittance service, And you need to trust that this entity will actually play its part. Now imagine that you have to make an international payment right now using traditional money. If it is nighttime, if it's the weekend or a bank holiday, or if the amount is too big, you simply will not be able to make the transfer. Depending on where or to whom you're transferring that money, the bank will require you to be filling out forms and present documents related to foreign exchange control. You may have to be explaining the reason for that transfer, and depending on the reason, the remittance may not be authorized. Here's another situation. If you are prosecuted, a judge can order the freezing of your bank accounts. In fact, the bank itself can block your account in some cases. These are problems related to centralized money. When your savings are in the bank, which is a centralized point, you are vulnerable. In other words, it is other people who decide how you can use your own money. However, none of this happens with your bitcoins. You can always move your bitcoins as you wish. Despite the advantages listed, most people still have more trust in the coins issued by governments, by states, simply out of habit. State currency is perceived as more reliable simply because, well, that is how it has been in the recent years, in the recent decades. All our lives we have been used to trust in paper notes, drawings of historical figures. We value these pieces of paper simply because we have been taught to do so. By no means we're saying that you should completely abandon the use of state currency and have all your assets in cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is still new. It is difficult to make purchases with Bitcoin. It is still not accepted everywhere. There is still a lot of volatility. That is why you should enter the new world of cryptocurrencies step by step, strengthening your position as you better understand this new world of the future of money. The greatest power of state currencies today is precisely the tradition, which has been built up over the years. Bitcoin is also building its tradition, but it is still young. Those who embark on this adventure in the early stages, taking risks, may also have great rewards ahead. Bitcoin is decentralized and scarce, as well as divisible, durable, and portable. These are all characteristics that make this cryptocurrency a financial instrument that is superior to state currencies. So now I invite you to visit the link arata.se/diamondhands for a special presentation to learn more.